After 4 years in Kansas City, here are the reasons we would never move back to California.
Oh, biscuits.
The first and most controversial reason is the politics. California is extremely liberal, and I think the best way to illustrate this is to tell you a story. When I lived in California, I was a pastor, and we worked with a ton of homeless people. One of my homeless friends was named Lance, and Lance would come over all the time, and we would have conversations with him, and we actually walked with Lance in his journey to find a place to live. After he got off the streets, we said, Lance, why don't you try to find a job? Find something that you enjoy doing. And he looked us in the eye and he said, look, the state of California gives me $400 a month. They take about $50 a month for rent. And at this point, he was living in a renovated hotel that was actually nicer. It was nicer than the $1,100 a month, 300 square foot studio that we were renting. And he lived in about 1,000 square feet. And he only paid $50 a month out of his stipend that he got from California for being homeless. And he said, look, they only take $50 a month. I get to live in this brand new renovated hotel, pay about $1 a meal to the food pantry, and I have enough food. And the rest of the money that I have, I can just go and spend on, I can just spend on myself. You know, this isn't a political channel. I'm not here to air my political opinions, but it was really demoralizing living in California, having a 2-income household. My wife was an ER nurse. I was a pastor. We were living with our young child in California, and it was really demoralizing to live in a place where a person who was relying upon the government could have more spending money and a better financial life by his own admission than we did. He had more spending money than we had because we spent at the time, you know, like I said, $1,100 a month for 300 square feet, a little studio apartment. We were spending that. We were also trying to keep up with the high gas prices. We were keeping up with the high taxation. And so it was really demoralizing that it was so hard to get ahead in California. Now moving here to Missouri, it's a lot more conservative area. Missouri is a super conservative state in general. But one of the things that we do enjoy about Kansas City in particular is that once you get to bigger cities, you have a big hodgepodge and mix of people. We live right down the street from our neighbors who would be a lot more liberal than we would be, but we have a good relationship with them. It felt like in California that it was so liberal that it was pretty much oppressive. So Missouri is much more conservative. I think the politics here are better. We homeschool our eldest child, and I know the Missouri homeschool laws are super friendly. The Kansas and Missouri laws are more friendly than the California homeschool laws. So that's something that you might want to think about if you're moving from a more liberal area and you're thinking about homeschooling, you're thinking about moving to a conservative area. Kansas City is a great place for that. So we definitely don't miss the politics in California. Another thing that we don't miss from California is the cost of living. As I mentioned before, we were renting a 300 square foot studio apartment, just one room, for $1,100. Before we were doing that, we were paying $900 for a really janky studio apartment that was about 200 square feet. It was a converted garage. And you know, when we moved out of that place, when we were taking stuff out of our closet, we realized that there was black mold in our closet with our clothes. So that was pretty disgusting. Before we left California for good, we were renting a place for $3,500 a month. It was a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath, about 1,100 square feet house that was on a very small lot. We were paying $3,500 a month. Of course, I think nowadays you'd be paying a lot more. If you're interested in finding out just how much it costs to live here in Kansas City, I linked my video here for the cost of living. But let me just give you a perspective of how freeing it is to live in a place where cost of living is so much less. Here we have 3 mortgages. 2 of them are rental properties. One of them is our house in Gladstone. We pay $800 a month. Another one is our duplex in Kansas City, Kansas, and we pay $600 a month. The last one is the house that we live in here in Midtown, and we pay $1,400 a month. Now, if you add all of that up, that's $2,800 a month. That's still less than we were paying for rent when we were living in Southern California. So that gives you a huge perspective. And again, 2 of those properties, those mortgages are being paid for by the people that we rent them out to. Not to mention right now, gas in Los Angeles is $6. It's about $6 a gallon. Gas in Missouri is about $3 a gallon. And all the taxes are typically cheaper here. Now, I'm not a tax professional. You can easily look that up, or you can call a tax professional to talk to you about how much the tax rates are in California, because it's so variable. It depends on if you're self-employed. It depends on if you're a W-2 employee. It depends on so many different things. I don't really want to get into that. That's really not the point of this video, but taxes here are lower than California. If you're looking to move to Kansas City and the surrounding areas from anywhere, whether it's from California whether it's from the East Coast, whether it's from Florida. We help all sorts of people relocate right here to Kansas City, Missouri. Currently, I have clients from New York, Utah, California, Oregon, Florida, and South Carolina looking for homes here in Kansas City. So give us a call, 816-4MOVE-KC, 816-4MOVE-KC. We would love to chat with you. I'll hop on a Zoom call with you and help you identify where you want to live when you move to Kansas City. 816-4MOVE-KC. And remember, we also have agents that speak Spanish. If you stick around until the end, I'll give you a bonus reason why we would never move back to California that may or may not apply to you. The third reason we would never move back to California is the traffic is so much better here than it is there. Let me tell you a story of the things that we like to do in California. We loved going to the beach. I remember that going to the beach was such a tension relieving, stress relieving practice for our family. We would do it all the time. And we would drive down to the beach, and typically when we would leave a little bit after the rush, and so it would take us about an hour to get down to the beach. But I remember this particular time when we went down to the beach. We went down there with our church, and on the way back, it took us about an hour to get down. And guess how long it took us to get back? It took us 3 hours to get back from the beach. We had our crying 3-month-old son with us. We had the people from our church. We were all stuck in traffic for 3 whole hours to travel about 40 miles. And that was typical. Here in Kansas City, you're never going to experience that unless you run across the most extreme conditions, like a crazy wreck or something like that. Now, we do have traffic here in Kansas City. Of course, this is a big city with 2+ million people living here, and we also have a lot of construction going on right now, but it is not going to be nearly the same as the traffic in Los Angeles, California. I mean, there are 2.3 million people in the Kansas City metro area compared to 12 million people in the Los Angeles metro area, so you can see where all the traffic is coming from. Now, the infrastructure here does need to expand, like I said, because there's going to be construction, because the infrastructure here does need to expand, but it is nowhere near as crazy as it can get in Los Angeles. Now, one good thing about the traffic in LA is that you always had an excuse for why you were late to something. If you were running late, you could always blame the traffic. Hey, sorry, got stuck in traffic, bad wreck on the 405. Won't be there for a little bit. Hey, I'm on the 210 right now, won't be there in a little bit. Hey, I'm going on the 605 and this truck jackknifed and it's all over the 605, won't be there for a little bit. So you don't necessarily have those excuses in Kansas City, so you better be on time if you move here. That leads us to another thing that we don't miss, and that is the pace of life. The pace of life is so much better here in Kansas City than it is in Los Angeles. Let me tell you 2 different scenarios that would illustrate how different pace of life is here than compared to Los Angeles. Now, let's just say you needed to be downtown Los Angeles at 6:00 p.m. for a dinner. Well, if you were trying to visit downtown LA, when I lived in LA, I would start getting ready about an hour and a half before I had to be there, so about 4:30, right? I needed to be in the car, ready to start driving by 5:00 p.m. if I was going to have any chance of making it downtown by 6:00. Now, I needed to actually make it down there by 5:45 because it was going to take me at least 15 minutes to find parking. And then after that, I was going to pay at least $20 to park my car and then go into dinner. And then I was going to have to do the same thing all over again. So now I'm out an hour and a half because that's going to be about 45 minutes driving each way. And I'm out at least $20 because you're going to have to pay for parking in downtown Los Angeles. So to sum it up, that's 1.5 hours in a car. That's $20+ in parking. Now compare the same thing if you had to be somewhere at 6:00 p.m. for dinner here in Kansas City. Go, run. At least for us, we live about 15 minutes away from downtown Kansas City. So I would need to start getting ready at 5:15 and I would need to be in the car by 5:30. Now, I still want to leave myself a little bit of time to find parking, but it is not nearly as hard to find parking here in downtown Kansas City as it is in Los Angeles. And guess what? A lot of the times I know places to park here because it's so uncrowded. I know places to park here where you can park for really cheap. I would say $5 or less. A lot of times when we go downtown, we park at Union Station and we can get that ticket validated, and that's cheap. It's free. So now I'm downtown at 6:00. I do my thing down there. It's 15 minutes back home. So that took me only 30 minutes of travel and maybe $5 or less of parking. Now that extra hour that you would spend living in Los Angeles, those add up over a long period of time. You feel like all that you do is sit in traffic. All that you can do is listen to podcasts or audiobooks. And those are great things to do, but if you want to spend time with your kids, if you want to be home with your wife, if you want to enjoy your backyard, if you want to hang out with some friends, Kansas City is the better place to do it. Pace of life is just so much better here. Another thing I don't miss is the pollution. Like I said, 12 million people in the Los Angeles metro compared to about 2 million people in the Kansas City metro. And you're going to notice that the pollution here is a lot less than a highly densely populated area like Los Angeles. Now in Los Angeles, if you're not from LA, you won't know what this means, but we had to do a smog check, and I absolutely hated smog checks.
Biscuits!
That was a yearly checkup that you would have to take your car in to check if the emissions were below whatever EPA standard that California had, and if they weren't, then you had to pay somebody to fix it, and it was typically expensive, it was a hassle, it was super annoying. I have said goodbye to smog checks for hopefully forever, because in Kansas City, there's a lot less cars here because there's a lot less people here. Now, you know, if you're watching this video, that I used to go to the beach a ton. And one of the most disappointing things when you went to the beach was that it was always littered with a bunch of trash from people who dump trash basically everywhere.
Why are you the way that you are?
And again, this isn't saying that people in LA have a greater chance to litter. It's just the population there is so much more than here in Kansas City that you notice it a lot. 12 million people and the waste that they make is a lot different than 2 million people here and the waste that we make. That leads us to my last reason that I would never move back to Los Angeles, and it is the seasons. Remember, stick around for a bonus reason after this one. You know, living in Kansas City, I'm not gonna lie to you, sometimes it can be brutal. The summers can get over 100 and it's humid. The winters can get below 0 and it's super cold and it's covered in snow, and you have to shovel your driveway, you have to wait for your car to thaw. All of those things are inconveniences to living in Kansas City. However, in exchange for that, you get some truly beautiful times. I love the spring, I love the fall, and I love the winter, especially the winter before Christmas. Now, do you know, if you've never read the Chronicles of Narnia, in the first book, the characters always reference that, hey, it's always winter and never Christmas. And when I lived in California, I really didn't understand that reference. I mean, I conceptually understood what it meant, but I didn't understand the anticipation that builds throughout the winter, especially with young kids, for Christmas. And the cold actually adds to that anticipation as the air gets cooler, as things start quieting down, slowing down. Christmas is such a peak point. We love Christmas here in Kansas City. It is a wonderful time for our youngsters. It's a wonderful time for Keller and Augie. They love it. I'm getting excited about it, and it's just the end of September. Christmas here, just because it's cold and there's typically snow on the ground, it has a magic that Christmases in California just didn't have. Of course, enjoyed Christmas just as much, and this may be a combination of my kids growing older and them enjoying it a lot more, but Christmases here just have a very unique magic and charm to them, especially when you can do things like Union Station. We love to do this thing called Winter Magic, where we take our kids and we take our van and we drive through a very well lit tunnel of light. And again, the transitional seasons are the most pleasant. Spring is beautiful. Fall, when the leaves change, oh, it is gorgeous. You want to be outside on your deck, sipping a hot cocoa, watching everything come from dead. In the spring, you're watching everything come from barren to just extremely green and lush. In the fall, you're watching everything slowly change colors. You're noticing the kind of crispness of the air, and that hint of that small hint of winter coming. I mean, it is a truly beautiful time. As promised, there is a reason that we would never move out of here that may or may not apply to you if you decide to move to Kansas City, and that is, we have such a great community here that we did not have in Los Angeles. In 4 years here in Kansas City, I have made lifelong friends that I cherish so much. That's not to say that I don't have friends in California. In fact, I was actually just talking to a friend that lives in California, and we keep up pretty frequently. But I think one of the things that it makes it that much harder to see friends and to see people in California is, again, going back to that pace of life. If we had dinner with a friend, we would have to leave at least an hour before, because we would always have dinner, and that's prime rush time in California traffic, right? And so it was just so hard to keep up with people. It was so hard to make new friends. I think that when you live in California, it can be extremely isolating. The reason I kept this at the end is because this may not be your experience here in Kansas City at all, but again, if you're looking to move here, we would love to talk to you. Our family has moved here, and we would love to share our experience with you. 816-4MOVE-KC.